Thank you. According to FICO and other sources, small amounts of medical debt that have been reported to credit bureaus can dramatically lower a consumer's credit score and keep a creditworthy customer from accessing credit and bolstering our economy. Is the review of medical debt and its reporting by credit bureaus on your radar screen?
It is, and more broadly, trying to understand the interplay between data accuracy, its resilience as it feeds into scores, and the usability of scores thereafter is within sort of both the medium-term research agenda and the near-term supervisory agenda.
Well, we know it impacts the credit score. The reason I asked that question is that I practiced law for several years and probably involved in 300, 400, or 500 bankruptcies. And one of the things that we saw towards the end of my law career and what we see today are people filing bankruptcy because of high medical bills. I mean, obviously, these are not large screen TVs. These are bills that were incurred because a person had no insurance or otherwise. And that being the case, it really has no impact, not the word impact, it really has nothing to do with a person's ability to pay the bills that would come day to day. And we're seeing even small amounts of money, even if they're money for bills, even if the bills are paid off, that are really impacting a person's credit score. That's where I want to go on it. And do you think that you would be open to look into the fact so that perhaps there may be a regulation that says if a medical debt is under such and such amount and it's been resolved, that it no longer should be a part of a person's permanent credit record?
I understand the issue that you're raising, and I do think that we should take steps to inquire into it. It is something that has been raised also in other contexts, field hearings that we've conducted. It's also analogous to other issues. I mean, for example, delinquency rates for homeowners who otherwise identical homeowners, one of whom happens to be underwater because he lives in a part of a country where there's been a lot of depreciation. Delinquencies are higher where people are more underwater. Does that necessarily mean that you are more or less likely to pay your auto finance?
Okay, same
analogous
issue.
kind of.
If I could send you a letter on that, just laying out that issue, then
we would welcome your thoughts on it.
Appreciate it. The second thought I had is on RESPA. When I practiced law, I closed probably 2,000 real estate closings, everything from small shopping centers and farms and residences, industrial properties, etc. And most of those were homes. And I'm showing my age, but it was before RESPA took effect. I think it was in 73 or 75. What we're seeing now is going from a relatively small folder of documents to documents that can reach 6, 7, 8, 10 inches high. And my experience, in fact, in closing one of my own loans, is the fact that it's impossible for a person to read through all that information. And in the effort and good faith attempts by regulators to disclose to the public, I think there's been so much work on that end that we really have to ask ourselves the question, exactly what does the consumer need to know, and perhaps start ending some of those. Alex Pollock, who was the head of the Federal Home Loan Board, I think you know Alec, came up with, I believe, with a 1.5-page closing statement. Are you familiar with that?
I am.
Tell me your thoughts on this, on the closing statement plus the amount of paper that appear at a closing.
Yeah, I would. I mean, obviously, many of the documents at a closing are state law driven and not federal. But I absolutely agree that there has been, over the period of decades, I assume right-minded in the moment, but almost reflexive reaction to there's a problem, add another disclosure, and at some point, and I think that point is relatively early on, there are diminishing returns to another sheet of paper. And I mentioned to one of your colleagues in a different subcommittee here a couple weeks ago, My wife and I, my wife happens to be here today. We bought a house a year ago. She does financial fraud at the Department of Justice, and consider what I do for a living. We didn't read the documents at the closing table. At some level, to the extent that things are predicated on an unrealistic assumption of human behavior, that's bad. That's why we're trying to get the most critical information in people's hands 3 days beforehand so that they actually have a chance to look at the most critical things ahead of time. I certainly don't think that just sort of throwing up our hands is the right answer, but we want to make things better and not worse.
Thank you.
Thank you.